I grew up in the 90s. It wasn't uncommon to hear about someone's dad hitting his late 40s, early 50s, and having that quote-unquote midlife crisis. Sometimes it leaned on the cringe side of things, buying that red Corvette, the loud Harley motorcycle. And other times it was painful and disruptive. Extramarital affairs, perhaps a young girlfriend came into the picture, maybe even a bad divorce. Now I'm not quite at midlife as I define it, but I have friends and family who are reaching this period in their lives, and instead of going through some kind of crisis, are now asking questions and looking to make changes to their own status quo. What do I want for myself in my 40s and 50s? Am I where I want to be? Am I the person I thought I would become? As I honed in on the midlife topic and prepared for this episode of Cold Coffee, I realized how people's views on aging have drastically changed from crisis to opportunity, moving toward the best version of yourself. That's why I had to speak with Houstonian and author of the book and podcast, The Midlife Male, Greg Scheinman. Greg, thanks for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Greg, let's start with your own midlife and how you got to this point and how you're helping others maximize theirs.
I aged into it.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. And I found myself at 47. Mm-hmm. For reference, I'm now 52. But found myself at 47, the same age as when my father passed away. Mm. Married, beautiful wife, beautiful boys, partner in a large firm, successful by all the outside metrics, if you will. And I didn't feel it. I was sitting there in my car in the parking lot of the office building. Got my office on the 24th floor, overlooking downtown Houston. Yeah. The multi-million-dollar book of business. I had what every guy goes after. And I had had trials and tribulations along the way, and this was really where I thought I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get out of the car. 10-year anniversary.
Wow. Thinking
I'm with my firm. I've now lived a day longer than my father had. Yeah. And all I could think about is this it? Is this the best I'm ever going to do, the best I'm ever going to feel, the best I'm ever going to look? And it's not that great. It was the City Slickers moment.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty rough spot to be.
Totally.
And I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know how I was going to fix it, if you will.
Yeah.
I knew why I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I knew why I wanted to be a better husband, why I wanted to be a better father, why I wanted to be a better provider, why I probably didn't want to stay in this career. Mm-hmm. Why the whys were covered. Why I wanted to cut down on the drinking, why I wanted to get back in better physical condition. All the whys were very clear. Mm-hmm. The challenge I was faced with was I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And that's what really set me on this path. It was a really kind of self-serving, selfish path at the beginning to figure out the how, to go along with this why, and at the same time not blow it all up.
Right. Yeah.
So that's really kind of what I set out to do, is how do I figure out the how part without blowing up my entire life? And if I can go and do that, let me test and retest what's happening.
Yeah.
And then learn from that, apply it. And that's a lot of how we got here. I did what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Was, well, I don't ask for help. I don't know how to do that. I don't have a therapist. I don't have anybody to go to. If I go to my business partners, I'm going to conceivably hurt my business and my standing here. If I go to my wife, she's going to think I'm in midlife crisis and I'm complaining all the time. Right. I don't want to dump on my kids. I don't want to go to my friends because I don't want to lose my friends and have them say, Greg's the guy who's always complaining. You're like on an island. Right. So I brought a microphone. I said, you know what? I can go talk to really impressive, high-performing middle-aged men, and I can go ask them the questions that I have. Right. And as long as I bring a microphone, now I'm like a journalist. Now I'm like obligated to say all of these things that I'm feeling without making it seem like it's really about me.
I'm just asking for a friend.
Right, exactly. Like here I am with my podcast and my microphone talking to entrepreneurs and risk takers. I was in the risk management business. This is responsible, what I'm doing. Right. And what it really was a very self-serving mission to go try to get the answers to the test. And I interviewed 200 of the highest performing men and over a 3-year period. So from 47 to 50. Interesting. That's how I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were saying that you were kind of hitting this place of, asking, you knew all the whys, but you didn't necessarily have the hows. But you said something that I found very interesting. You said, I didn't want to blow up my life. And I feel like so often around midlife, and especially around men, we use the word crisis, midlife crisis. And we also use the word selfish. This is my time. I've made all the money. I've done all the things. And now I'm going to focus on myself. How do you focus on oneself, not blow up your life, and also work on yourself?
Let's take these in order.
Yeah.
The first one, this notion of quitting your job and following your passion or blowing up your life.
Yes, blowing up your life, yeah.
Is very trendy. We should all be happy and we should follow our passions and quit our jobs and life is too short to be unhappy and all of these things. And you're being sold this bill of goods, if you will. Self-help and masterminds and retreats and all of these things. I'm going to tell you something. That might be the most galactically irresponsible thing you could possibly do in middle age. Because if you think you are unhappy while you have benefits, a 401k, a job, a book of business like I did, equity in the company, just wait until you quit and they turn off the financial faucet with a marriage, a wife, kids in private school, a couple of cars, all the because you want to go chase that passion, which doesn't actually pay for the lifestyle you have grown accustomed to.
Right. And speaking of trends, like right now, everything is like leave the big city and move out to buy a farm and do that like cottage core kind of lifestyle. Yeah.
It sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
And I'm not discounting being happy. What I talk about is making a plan, what we call the Midlife Action Plan, a map. Because if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
Quitting was out of the question for me.
I think it's out of a question for a lot of guys. People. Yeah, a lot of men.
For me, it was out of the question also because here's another one. I gave a lot to that job, to that career. And it would have been irresponsible to just walk away and give it back. You got to sometimes work to finish. I was I was almost at the goal line. We were almost in the end zone. I'm not going to throw it all away now. And my wife was largely responsible for helping me think that stuff through. And it's also where I got my first coach and started to look for certain help. But what I did was I really made a plan. I said, okay, where do I want my life to be in 3 years? And if that's where I want my life to be in 3 years, how do I reverse engineer back to the quarterly, monthly, weekly, and ultimately daily positive action steps that I need to take in order to get it there? And a lot of the time, Celeste, in this whole quitting your job thing and blowing it all up, your job's not the problem. You're the problem. My job, my career, my clients, my partners, my everything else, they were not the problem. Every time I was blaming them, had nothing to do with them. It has to do with taking a really good, hard, long look in the mirror and saying, do I like the guy that I am? And you don't have to be the CEO of your company, but you are always going to be the CEO of your own life. And once you start taking agency over that, the actions you take, the choices you make, that's when things start getting better. Instead of not liking my job and wanting to quit and leave, I started being grateful and thankful for the opportunity and career that I had because it allowed me to be actually one of the highest paid podcasters in the world for 3 years because I didn't quit.
Right.
I did my job, minimum effective dose, And it allowed me to do all of these other things. It wasn't keeping me from being in shape. I was keeping me from being in shape. It wasn't keeping me from hosting a podcast and interviewing people and following those passions and curiosities. It wasn't making me drink. It wasn't doing any of those things. We just think that we have to act and perform and live a certain way. Mm-hmm. But when you start to flip the mindset around and take back some control, you realize it's always been there.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? There's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, but what do you think most men are missing? Like, what are they missing when they hit midlife?
Well, you mentioned crisis being, of course, the first word that comes up.
Yeah.
Midlife is synonymous with crisis. When you play word association, you say midlife, the next word is crisis. The next word is typically crisis. It is never fun, greatness, happiness, fulfillment. Those adjectives don't tend to follow the word midlife. And I don't see it that way. You know, our flagship column at Midlife Male now in our newsletter and weekly magazine is called How I See It. And it's really about perspective. You could see midlife as a crisis, which I think is antiquated and outdated, mm-hmm. and appropriately stereotypical for the past.
Right.
But if you choose to see midlife as a catalyst, if you choose to see midlife as an opportunity, mm-hmm. if you stop seeing aging as something to fear and you start seeing it as something aspirational, all of a sudden you've changed the game.
It almost sounds like you've also taken control. You've taken back some of that control over your own life. And so I want to know, you went out and you interviewed all of these men, right? When you had all the whys. So talk to me about the hows, and also tell me about during those 3 years that you were interviewing those 200 really successful men. What are some of the nuggets and takeaways that you learned that others can apply to their life?
Absolutely. And so what happened was I started identifying areas of my life that I wanted to make improvements in. Mm-hmm. And instead of chasing salary and title, which so many of us are conditioned to do, myself included, guilty, I said, what if I redefined what success looked like? Because clearly this isn't it.
Right.
So I just wrote down what's important to me. I drew a circle on a legal pad, and I started breaking it up into pieces of the pie, mm-hmm. okay? My family, that's what's most important to me. Mm-hmm. My wife and my kids. I include friends in that, friends that are my fitness, which is really health.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have your health, what do you have? Again, my father passed away young. I have this opportunity to live longer. Health is important. So family, fitness. Okay, what else is important? Finance, money. Talked about blowing things. Well, what does wealth really look like to me, or success? Well, okay, in finance. Well, I want to have enough money to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, for as long as I want. Okay, what is that number? Like, what does that look like? Yeah. That was the third piece. Then I looked at food, which is really, it's nutrition. We love to eat, mm-hmm. and break bread with people that we like and cook and all that. And then I looked at fashion, which really is style and really confidence. And I was wearing clothes that I didn't really like, that didn't make me feel like me, going through the motions. And then the last one was fun, which most guys in middle age are not having enough of, right. or prioritizing, or, like me, having a lot of the wrong kind of fun and thinking you're doing it for all the right reasons. Mm-hmm. Or maybe not thinking that you're doing it for the right reasons, but you don't really know how to get out of it. So once I defined those 6 F's, that's what I started talking to guys about. So I wanted to become better with my family. Mm-hmm. So I would talk to Nate Klemp, who wrote The 80-80 Marriage. I would talk to doctors, and I would talk to therapists, and I would invite them on to talk about how to be a better husband and a better father, better man, so that I could prioritize my family. Then it came down to, okay, if I want to be a better man and do all these things for everybody else, it came down to I have to be better to myself. Mm-hmm. Self-care is not selfish. Right. So let's put down the drinking. Let's pick up some weight. So then I started to talk to the best fitness experts in the world. Gunnar Peterson, who's trained Sylvester Stallone, like all the guys whose posters I used to have on my wall. I'd go, okay, who trained them? And I would go out and I would interview them. So I want Gunnar Peterson's perspective on health and fitness. I want Don Saladino's perspective, who trains Ryan Reynolds and John Krasinski. And I want Troy Aikman's perspective on being an athlete his whole life and now being in better shape in middle age. So I was really fortunate that I got a chance to talk to these people. Finance, the top wealth managers in the world, the best chefs that were out there who turned their own lives around, like Seamus Mullen, who wrote a book called Real Food Heals. And all of this was inspiring and lighting me up. I was getting all of this insight, I say access, insight, building my network, accountability. And I was testing then and retesting all of these principles. If I went to the gym and did what Gunnar told me, what would happen? If I ate like how Seamus told me for 60 days or 90 days, what would happen? And everything happened. It's all connected. I started sleeping better. I started getting excited to wake. I was waking up with energy, going to bed tired, the good kind. There weren't hangovers anymore because I wasn't interested really in drinking. It's not like I declared anything.
Right.
These things just started, the negative habits and behaviors started to work their way out of my life, and they were replaced by the healthier, better habits. And it all happened over time. And it was not through motivation, and it was not looking for a quick fix or 7-minute abs. It was habitual. It was positive reinforcement, inspiration, and then application.
So where do you think men should start? Where do you think, now that you understand the how and you've done it and you've tested and you've talked to the best of the best, what if somebody's listening right now and they're like, I don't even know where to start?
That is the number one question I get every single day. And my answer to that is, today is the day you start. And how do you start and what do you do? You can start by making one simple, positive decision at a time. If you're drinking 7 Diet Cokes a day, drink 6. And then go for 5 the next day. You can swap a soda for water. You can take the stairs instead of the elevator. You can kiss your wife good morning instead of rolling out of bed and taking her for granted because you've been married for 25 years. You can leave work a little bit early and make it to your kid's game. Maybe you don't have to be the first one in after 20-something years on the job, and you can have breakfast with your family. You can make one small positive action step. All you got to do is think of one, and there is no wrong answer. Something that you could do today that you didn't do yesterday. And these little incremental, small, tiny wins stack up. And that's what really makes the biggest difference. It's not about the extremes.
Well, that's what I find so interesting, Greg, is that when you said, if you're drinking 7 Diet Cokes a day, I immediately thought, drink no Diet Cokes. But you didn't say that. You said, drink 6.
What we want to do is we want to set people up for success.
Yeah.
Male, female, any age, it doesn't matter. The rules that have come out of the interviews that I've done, which are in the book, they apply for everybody at any age or any stage that are out there. And my F's don't have to be your F's. But there are a few things that you can do. One, knowing what's important is what's most important. That first step of sitting down and determining what success looks like for you, what's most important, is a big one. And you've got to write it down because the statistics are very, very clear that when people write down their standards and write down their goals and what's on their mind, the odds of them actually accomplishing it increase by like 44%.
Yeah.
So put it on paper. Most don't, but take some time. Knowing what's important is what's most important. The second is, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. You have to start outlining that map for yourself. And then once you have an idea of what that destination is and where you're going, that's when again, you can reverse engineer back to it. I'll tell you the third one, which is really important right now, especially for guys. I call it the ACE principle: aggregate, curate, and eliminate. Because there is so much noise out there.
So much.
And it's overwhelming, and it paralyzes men in particular from, as you said, getting started and not knowing where to start. So the key is you can aggregate from all of the stuff that's out there. But where this really gets good is you've got to curate it down to what works for you and then eliminate what doesn't. So I didn't take 200 men and follow every single thing from each one of them and go from one interview to the next and say, okay, he told me this and I'll do this for a few days. And then he told me this and I'll do this for a few days. And it was this aggregation process and then taking it all in over time and curating it down to what I really thought would work for me. We're all different. And then eliminate the stuff that wasn't going to work. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Just means it's not right for me. It might be working for Troy, it might be working for Gunnar, it might be working for Bob, whoever they are. Yeah. But you have to build your own personal operating system.
Right.
And then the next one, which is, I think, really important because we get hung up on this, show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What we schedule gets done. It's just like writing certain things down. I have guys, and I was guilty of this for a while too, with two calendars. I had my work calendar, which dictated everything, and then I had my personal calendar, which seemed to come second or third to everything else.
Right.
And they didn't jive. We have one life. We have one calendar. It is all connected. It is all important. The workouts get scheduled. The family nights get scheduled. The Little Leagues get scheduled. No different from the board meetings or the professional obligations in there. Mm-hmm. And then I'll land the plane with the last one, which is grace, gratitude, and latitude. You got to be nice to yourself during this process. Yeah. We tend to beat ourselves up thinking again that we have to have all the answers, all the solutions, push the boulder uphill all by ourselves, and we don't. Yeah. This is not overnight success. This is not about transformation. This is not about reinvention. This is not about all those grand extremities, that are out there. This is one day at a time, moving in the right direction, being kind to yourself throughout, testing and retesting, and when you find things that work, keep doing them, and when things do not work, change them.
Greg Scheinman is the author, founder, and CEO of The Midlife Male. Greg, thank you so much for joining me.
It was great to be here. Thank you.